Welcome to the August 8th, 2024 meeting of the Concord Historical Commission. We are conducting this meeting online in accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. The public may access this call through both telephone and video conferencing. Members of the public will have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions following presentations and questions from the commission. To do so, please raise your hand in the participant function of the Zoom meeting platform. I, Alan Bogosian, will call on each commissioner for comments on an application and then open the meeting for public comment. Once there are no more public comments, I will ask for a motion from the commission to continue to approve with conditions, excuse me, or to reject the application. At this time, I would ask for a roll call from the commission members to make sure we have a quorum. Members of the commission, would you please identify yourself? Starting with Nancy Nelson.
Oh, Nancy Nelson, associate, but acting as a member.
Nancy Priscilla Lee, member, full member.
That leaves Alan. Oh,
Lauren Meyer, associate member.
And I'm Alan Bogosian. And tonight I will designate Nancy Nelson as a voting member for the commission. So our roll call is complete, all right? So the first item on the agenda, or do you want to? I see Elizabeth is here. Hello, Elizabeth.
Hi,
how
are y'all?
Do you want to go out of order and start with Elizabeth and do the historic preservation plan update?
Yep.
Yes.
Why don't we do that?
All right. Anne and I did not rehearse this. She may have other ideas. Do you want to start, Anne? How would you like to do this?
You could start. I was
Okay.
going to talk about, how we had a meeting with Mass Historical Commission and some of their feedback and some of the feedback, from us too, about just how the, we're getting very lengthy chapters and it might be good to edit them down and also reorganize them, which will take, quite a lot of work, I think. And talking about the scheduling shift. So since we met with Mass Historical, we've talked about shifting the schedule a bit. I wanted to cover that. And then also, so we sort of need to regroup a bit. And maybe there are areas where the commission members can really help. Maybe there are chapters or sections where we can provide some relief to Elizabeth and Peter, and so that they can focus in on the real sort of planning aspects of it. I think we're in, sorry, I'm still going, Elizabeth, that's okay. So we completed phase 1. We're into phase 2, which is really the community outreach portion of it. So the survey results, I think sort of the past community, looking at past planning projects and hearing what the community has had to say over decades, I think is really important to distill. And, continuing the interviews. And once those key components are complete, I think that's when the recommendations it makes sense to start receiving recommendations. I think in the order, the schedule that had been presented earlier, recommendations had been presented sort of before the survey results were in, which doesn't seem right to me. So that was actually one of the questions to Jen, is this sort of an audit by Heritage Strategies, or is this really a community-based plan where the community has a lot to say? And I would hope that it's the latter, that, that you all are a very, very important part of this. and the whole community is.
Yeah, I think the community survey report's important also, as is the focus group reports, which, I did a deep dive in a different way than is sort of a standard focus group report, and I'm in the process of revising that. All of this is not writing the plan, but it's getting material in place to write the plan. And the recommendations are the heart of the plan. But you've got to, how shall I say, you have to show your work, in order to make a recommendation resonate for people. They have to see what we know enough. They have to trust that we know enough to be able to make that recommendation. And it does need to reflect the community.
Nancy Nelson, do you have a?
I just have a clarifying question. Anne, have we seen what the staff has said about the plan, and have we seen other input to the plan? And am I just needing to go back and look at the record a little bit more?
No,
Okay.
you haven't.
Okay, so
It's
that
really
would-
sort of a vast, there's really a vast body of text that's been submitted
from you guys, or from
from
everybody?
Heritage Strategies.
From Heritage,
Heritage
okay,
Strategies.
but then planning has responded back to them. You and the planning department responded back
We're in that stage, yes.
with your own,
Well, I've started to say, that we need to sort of regroup and shift the focus, and so that we can distill it down, so that we're not spending too much time reading, the same thing in one section. I mean, there is about 2 inches of
stuff.
stuff that's been submitted, and just the table of contents is like 15 pages. So I think it's too much to ask, of us. And I think part of the reason why we did hire them is to help sort of distill things down and make it accessible to everyone.
So my question is that the feedback from the planning professionals, you and your team there, is that basically the essence of what you've told Heritage Strategies?
Yes, so
Okay,
not going too much into the details yet, but right.
Okay.
So this may need more of us together to really,
okay,
sure that we're all on the same page, and that we're communicating and making sure that it's distilled in the way that the community wants it to be distilled.
okay, thank you. That's all.
Lauren?
Yeah, I think following up on what Nancy said, forgive me my ignorance here, but I'm a little confused about process and how the commission fits in with it's not a criticism in any sense of the word. I think particularly, other than the workshops that we've attended, I certainly haven't really reviewed anything. Maybe if Anne and Elizabeth could just kind of, I hear what Anne's saying about the need for more support. And certainly I think we'd be happy to do that. But maybe you could speak a little bit about the process relative to the commission and various submittals that are submitted and how the commission fits into all that. It's just not clear to me. I apologize.
Part of- Yeah, go ahead, Anne. Some of it has to do with the scope that Massachusetts Historical Commission wants.
Right. I heard that loud and clear in the very beginning, that they're sort of driving the bus, but Elizabeth is trying very hard to make it meaningful to Concord. Is that fair?
Well, of course, but I think making it readable for Concord is as much part of the challenge, I think, is what Anne has said, and I agree with her.
Yeah.
The Historical Commission's still working their way out of sort of an original idea of what preservation planning means for them. And they have this long list of things that they want to see reports on. And their view originally, and as their work has matured across Massachusetts, this has changed a little bit, but it's still kind of, it's just kind of still in the framework, it's still in the basic assumptions. And that is that, for example, I think you did see the report on the National Register and the report on the survey. Very long, helpful to have that information in mind. And I think their original view was that you would do all those kinds of reports, it's a whole long list, and then you stack them and staple them, put a cover on it, and a little table of contents, a little shorter than Anne is suggesting, which she's right. And then you'd have a plan. And that's really not how we believe that should be done. And over the time that my partner has done most of the Massachusetts plans, he's kind of worked with them. And what we have arrived at this point is the idea of writing these reports anyway, but that they would not be. I mean, there's a need to write them enough to have them be appendixes to the report, but then pull out the material from that and you work it into an actual plan that is
Right.
legible. In a lot of ways. I mean, it's got to be designed in photographs and all that sort of stuff, but it's got to be simple.
So you're
And,
saying, so you're saying that these narrative reports in a sense get summarized and then incorporated into a narrative plan that.
I guess what, I mean, if you remember I probably did this in both, the report on the National Register and on the survey had like jottings in there and brackets on kind of ideas for recommendations.
Yes.
And so this is a thinking process that's going on as much as a writing process, sort of helping us really understand and see the body of material that you have in the surveys, for example. Or in this, and now, we've done a deep dive into municipal bylaws and the history of historic preservation in Concord and a lot of other things that we need to understand. How much of it has to actually go in the plan, I think, is the art of this. We don't need to give everybody everything we know. If they really want details, then there'll be an appendix that explicates as much as necessary. And when Anne mentions the repetition, what she's talking about is things like where would we talk about the historical commission? There's a list of partners and stakeholders that we've developed, and it's long, and what's pretty wonderful about it is that it's a demonstration of your social capital. It's just amazing how many different groups there are, and I think showing that somehow in the plan would be a good thing. But so there's a discussion of the commission in there, and then there's a discussion of the commission in the history of historic preservation a little bit. You get a sense of what they've done in the past, and then there's a discussion of the commission and the bylaws. Well, it's not going to be that way in the plan, but it's appearing in these different places because as you write this, you're trying to kind of get your arms around it all. So that's how that happens. I think when we do, it's kind of like Envision Concord is like 284 pages. And then it's got, I don't know, 900 pages. I don't know, Anne, I just looked at it the other day and I've forgotten, but it's an absolutely enormous number of pages for appendices. It's the same thing here, except that we want to keep it to a much more reasonable length in both cases, both the appendices and the other. So we've, the deal with the reports is that during the writing phase, which is the phase to follow this, theoretically, you take the reports and you revise them. And that's, we're taking in some information from Anne and others on how to do, how that should be done. And Jen Doherty is our coordinator at the Massachusetts Historical Commission, and she's seeing that material as well. So asking you guys to read it more than once, in the length that it is right now is a lot. There's a lot to it.
Have we seen Mass Historical's comments? Because that might give us at least a clue of where we're headed in terms of what they're.
Sure.
Oh, no.
Right, and I feel as if, staff certainly needs to make comments too. So, right, I mean, I'd love to hear from Nancy Frizzelli too. So that was sort of, I did meet with Jen separately afterward, because even after we met, we received another, enormous chunk of information.
Yeah, yeah.
Another, I forget how many, I think it was 70 pages. Even after the feedback that, we really want this to be concise and, powerful to help sort of lead the readers through. So right. So I guess the question is, do you just want to receive it as it comes and wade through everything, the way I am, and sort of just feel overwhelmed by it and discouraged, frankly, by it,
Yeah.
because it's too much?
Yeah.
Or, should I
That-
take on
And
this
that's
and try
where we
to
have to
boil it
jump in.
down, or
let-
how do we get to where we need to be, and how do we do it
Yeah.
together without feeling discouraged, any one of us,
Right. Let's have Nancy chime in for Lee.
So just thinking through this, I haven't really, I've stepped back from the preservation, this whole process, because we haven't been, our members haven't been asked to do anything specific besides going to the few meetings that we've had together and making some comments about those materials. So, maybe just a suggestion. I'm really, yeah, I'm just not following it closely for that reason. And I'm thinking, if you're overwhelmed, because I haven't seen the material. I don't know all the things that you've gathered, but I can imagine. I mean, I can in 2 inches, and I can imagine all the appendices you're going to have. Is what can we do to help you? I think that's what we, and
that's one of the things we want to talk
yeah,
about tonight.
and
See
I
what
was
we can
thinking
do.
that, another thing is that if there is such a lot of material, I'd rather get it sooner rather than later, because I don't want this to be coming down the line and where you've done all the work and then all of a sudden we're asked to think about it. I'd rather have more time to absorb it and see your process of how you're working through the material. Even if we're not going to read every word, maybe it's something like we could have a spot in the office where we could go, because maybe, we don't want to be sending all this stuff through digitally and having to print it out. Maybe a place where we could just come in and work quietly, look through it. Whatever you have. I don't know if that's relevant. Yeah. Those are my thoughts.
Right, and again, I feel like there are like big sections that sort of maybe belong in different places and should be grouped together, and I guess I also just wanted to, it came to mind that I've done strategic planning for a museum in the past, a small museum, and worked with the board of trustees and with the town, and worked closely with the advisor, and it was sort of, she and I would work together and then bring it to the group and, get their feedback and then rework it. And, but I realized, I'm not like the director of the historical commission, in the same way I was at the museum. So this is a different sort of process. So I'm also not entirely sure about my role in a way too. But hopefully we can, maybe we need a separate meeting in person to sort of look at the documents together and really hash it out,
Right.
I mean,
So,
I'm, away for a lot these days, and I wouldn't mind receiving everything, as much as you want to share digitally. I think that it sounds to me like what I'm hearing, that you need some feedback, or you're seeking some help and support to think organizationally about the plan. That's sort of what information goes where. And then secondly, are you looking to edit sections that you think are too long? Is that the question, Anne? Or is it really more you need someone to kind of read the material and take a step back and brainstorm a little bit more about how it all fits together?
Right. The big picture thing, I think, is something
Yes.
that the commission, should really be involved with and could really
Mhm.
help with. Then there are also, I'm sure, sections where, that would be fun for commission members too. The history of historic preservation planning. I mean, Elizabeth has put together a lot of great information, but maybe that's something that, it could come off her plate at this point, and commission members could work on that and have a lot of fun with it too.
Oh,
Is that possible to do
oh,
with just by ourselves, Anne? Could we meet informally to do something like that? Or
I think so. I think someone could help, work on the draft and then bring it back out to the commission, and then the commission could work on it some more. So for example, that historic preservation planning section, that's like an appendix in itself. And then there were, I think, 3 or 4 appendices to the appendix. It's like, oh no.
Yeah, the base document is only
Wow.
13 pages or Well-
Nancy Nelson?
I'm a little daunted by having to do professional review of some products that are going to be in the plan. I'm more interested in being able to say something about the organization if that's not already prescribed by Mass Historical. So I guess I'm confused about how much. I don't think I can review some of these documents like the history of preservation efforts in Concord. I can't do that. And I'm not prepared to do the research to allow me to do that. That's kind of what we're paying for, right? Isn't that what Elizabeth has done? So I'm a little confused about what our role can be. I'd like to see, like Lauren said, I think, I'd like to see what we're talking about and what the feedback has been so far, so we could at least get oriented to the conversation.
Well, there is a table of contents. There's one that's been prescribed in the scope, and then we suggested alterations to that.
But that's been fleshed out a lot, right? Or pieces of
No,
pieces of that have been tackled, right? No?
No, and I have a lot of thoughts on that too. I spent a good part of the weekend thinking about how to restructure that. But that would be a really important piece for all of you to look at together
Yeah,
and share our thoughts and try to come up with.
I think a
Right.
meeting, an in-person meeting with the solid stuff in front of us on a table.
Yeah,
I
might
think,
be good. I
I'd
mean,
like to,
maybe
yeah.
people can have the electronic version when they get home, but I mean,
Right.
I'm interested in seeing it.
And if we can do that, Ian, without upsetting the apple cart, I mean, that I would move, like to gather everyone together, maybe in the room on at your office there, and we could talk about this.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I just am, as I said already, this is to me a really hard thing to talk about because I don't know what I'm talking. So, and I would be willing to write or do research or edit or any of those things, but I'd have to see what it was and see if I had the qualifications or skills necessary. If there's even a tiny piece, maybe we could take tiny pieces, but until we see what you need help with, it's hard to have this.
So even if we got many of the commission members together, it's not a horrible thing to call a meeting, is it?
no, it's easy.
No,
So maybe it's a meeting. But
Yeah, it's a working meeting
Mhm.
where we're really rolling up our sleeves and
right.
Yeah. But we
And-
will eventually have to vote on this, so that's the test, I think. Is that-
But it's more an information meeting. at this point, I would say. It's, what's
Sounds
our
a
role?
little
What do
bit like deliberation, I don't know.
Yeah.
But whatever works, I mean, I don't care, it's either a meeting or it's not a meeting. Yeah, but I think it's a good idea to get together,
For open meeting law, it has to be a posted meeting.
right?
And,
Yeah.
but I don't think you're voting on anything. It's a working meeting
Mhm.
to discuss the, the organization and content of the preservation plan.
I'm willing to
And
go
that's-
along with that, but we will have to vote at some point on the historic preservation plan.
Yeah, that you vote to accept it or not
Right.
accept it when it's
So we
done.
got-
And
and
I
that can-
think,
Down the line.
That can be done at a formal meeting.
yeah,
All right,
So,
that's our story, we'll stick to it.
so I guess what I'd be looking for is a motion necessary, Ann, to say we want to set up a meeting or,
I don't think so.
okay,
Well,
Should I just circulate an email after the meeting, try to set up the
Yeah.
time?
how does HTC fit into this picture?
Right, well, I did I looped Dennis into one of the emails with Melissa and Alan, because they've been involved in the sort of meetings with Mass Historical and communications with Elizabeth and Peter. And he kind of said that, the HTC isn't really involved with the sort of structure of the plan itself, but of course wants to stay involved in the sort of, real like planning meetings.
yeah, it's more in our court than
Yeah.
the HTC's court, so.
That was slick.
So.
Well,
and so looking at I'm sorry, Nancy.
no,
Did
I'm
you-
done.
No,
I'm just trying to think, if we want to do some speed reading to get up to speed. I mean, the presentation is online. And then I do see all these reference documents that are posted.
Yeah,
Right, I don't think that the draft plan as it is should be published publicly
Right,
because no one has seen it, right?
Right.
It's not really a draft plan. It's a
Right.
series of working papers right
Right.
now.
And it's
Yeah.
very early, right,
Exactly.
very, very early. So I can certainly send you sections, but I really don't want to I can send you everything if you want. But there may be areas where you want to focus, like the municipal bylaws and, but yeah, I mean, I can send you everything and maybe make suggestions as to what would make most sense to begin with.
okay.
would that be before we all sat around the table and saw the real documents?
Yes,
Get them first.
so you could skim them before we got together and put some thought into it.
Yeah, they're internal work products, I think, from a public
Yeah.
point of view. I don't think this is something that you all have to feel that you circulate or publish or anything.
Yeah.
When you're ready, but it's not ready. And
Yeah.
use some comments too, so.
Nancy, for Lee?
Elizabeth, can you just give us an idea of what you're spending your time on right now and where you are and what your thoughts are?
Sure. Well, we've produced a report on partners and stakeholders on municipal bylaws and regulations, history of historic preservation planning, a quick overview of the status of all town-owned historic resources. That was interesting. And in fact, I had mentioned to Ann that is one place where one person could tune that up, because it starts with your 2001 plan. We pulled everything out that was noted as town-owned, and then but we need to assign Macris numbers, and that's a a task that someone needs to do. We've done an overview of issues and challenges, which is our very preliminary thinking for Anne on what kind of where we would see ourselves placing some emphasis. And we've done a goals and vision and draft table of contents. It's a lot of material that's not, you know, the overview of issues and challenges is just to get us warmed up to actually write the plan and write recommendations. And then Anne's recommendation to us on the recommendations is, wait a minute, let's make sure that we're centered on the community. So I'm doing some I'm going back over my notes on the focus groups and doing some quick reports on that. And then the community survey report needs to be done. So we're not going to do sort of the next, we thought maybe the next step could be recommendations, which would be where you guys could have the opportunity to just think and talk about priorities and the things that are in your minds on what needs to get done in the next 10 years. But we're going to need to, I think we all need to look at the community survey report and think about that. So, you know, we're the one sort of big piece that's remaining, and Anne's recommendation on this is one that we're going to follow, and that is that in the plan there is expected to be a chapter on the history of the historical development of Concord. It's a kind of context statement. You already have those. They're old, and they may not need to be as long as they are, but they can be the basis for that chapter. And I think of that one actually as a freestanding chapter as opposed to being a working paper. So that's still to be done. But all the rest of the pieces, the things that we need to know about Concord are in our hands, in our minds. You know, the overview of the issues and challenges is kind of revealed for us. I think the sort of big insight we had in looking at that was that our big contribution is to help you think about the cultural landscape of the town and how you generally approach protection, starting from the base of your survey, and how do you update your survey, and how do you do that in a way that coordinates with the open space and recreation plan and with Envision Concord. And sort of how do you think generally about that? So, you know, your scenic byway program that you all fought for 20 years is, you know, part of the cultural landscape piece. And we see that as a sort of way of helping you all think about your landscape. You know, we Envision Concord calls for kind of a review of all of your bylaws and how that's going. And we've done our best at this point to do that. That's the one that I'd be most curious to hear from you guys. But, you know, it needs to be reviewed. And then that material will be the basis for writing a goodly part of the plan and the recommendations.
And say again, which piece is that you're talking about right now?
There's a report on your bylaws, regulations.
Oh, bylaws. Yeah.
And there's a lot. And that's the one thing about Concord is everything is a lot. You know, your open space and recreation plan is hundreds of pages. So is your Envision Concord. How do we not do that? And yet, you know, live up to the standards that have been set in some of the other planning that you've got there. It's pretty impressive stuff. And we want to match that. So, you know, how do we do that? But how do we do it in a way that's, you know, not 8 pages, but maybe 80?
Yeah. Right.
You know,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, just PS, you mentioned the Battle Road Scenic Byway. There's a lot to update about that committee.
To update. They need to update, or they have done updates that we need to understand?
It's been basically snoozing for 8 months, better part of 8 months. And
Just 8 months, that's good. Yeah.
It's not really a committee that's gone after any comprehensive planning for the byway beyond what MAPC did in 2013 or 11.
Okay. I had suspected as much. It's one of the questions I have.
Yeah, it's a little sad. Anyway, that's it. Sorry, Anne.
That's okay.
Okay.
Well, I guess also you know, the issues and challenges obviously should also include information from the community survey, because that's where you're going to hear about the issues and challenges.
Yeah.
So,
I'd
so
love
there's
to
an
see
early
that
draft, but I
tomorrow.
think that it needs a lot more, you know, once the community survey is really read through, then I'm sure that section will expand quite a lot. Mhm.
Is that something that can we read through those ourselves, like by coming into the office? They're digital, the surveys are in digital form.
Right, so that, for me, that's the most fun part too. And to really hear what the community had to say about the Historical Commission and HTC. So
Yeah.
yes,
do
there's a
how can
spreadsheet
we
which I
access
can
that?
send to everyone.
That would be great. I'd
Yeah.
love,
That would be fantastic. I'd love to know what the citizens of the town are saying.
Great.
And to see who responded
Right.
in terms of generalizations, not
But
specific.
no name, no
We've had
name.
go ahead.
No, not names, but, you know, maybe by, I don't know, I can't remember if we identified what our areas of interest or expertise was. I don't remember, but maybe there's some subcategories.
There are names. I mean, we need to be careful how we,
No, I'm not looking for names.
Yeah.
I don't think we should see the names.
Right.
Although sometimes we could guess from.
Right, I think a little oversight was that we probably should have figured out in the survey which respondents were the HDC and Historical Commission members, since your feedback, you know, is more, frankly, more important than the rest of the community, because you've been doing this job, right? So I'm not sure how to flesh that out, or maybe
Well, you
I
could do
hate to
some
have to
categories
ask you
because
all over again to fill out the surveys, but
you can see the names, but I don't want to see the names.
but just as a quick sample, Anne, did the four of you who answered the survey, did you put your name in?
I did not.
I did.
You did not, Nancy,
I
presumably,
think.
and Alan did not. Okay. I was going to say, if you had, then we could probably figure out how to break it out.
right, I think only one member of the historical and HTC groups filled in their name. The rest did not. And
Was
that
that
was
me?
Nancy. Thank you, Nancy.
Was that me?
That was
I'm
you.
the only one.
You're the only one.
Sissies. Yeah, I thought about it long and hard.
Okay. Well, I think probably the next thing to do is we'll talk and set up a time when we can get together. And when everyone's gonna be around next week or the week after, and see when we can meet. If everyone's agreeable to that.
Great.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm gonna be in Oregon from September 1st to September 9th, just to let you know.
And I am unfortunately going to be out of the country for from August 26th until September 15th.
Oh, that's almost my absence.
A little bit longer than yours, but same
Yes.
kind of same
Yeah, but it's
period.
with my four
Yeah.
sisters or three sisters. So
Oh, nice.
we only do so much.
well, is next week too quickly to get together, or
No.
a week from tonight? Was that
Would that be in person, Alan?
in person?
Yeah, okay. I'm in Maine, but I can come down.
Oh, that's.
I need to check on my garden anyway.
Well, we can come to Maine.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We're coming.
Historic house in a cultural landscape.
Yeah, why don't we shoot for next Thursday, if you're available?
Okay, could we do it during the day?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Did I just miss the entire meeting?
Well, no,
Almost.
no, Doug, because there's gonna be another one next Thursday at 4 o'clock.
Okay, good. Apologies.
I just think encourage you to send us as much stuff as, so that we can.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
We need to
Or,
talk.
or post it, oh, you don't want to post it, right, on our site? Yeah, sorry.
Mm.
Yeah,
Never
no, I
mind,
don't
never
think
mind,
so.
never mind. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
we're
got it.
not ready for that.
I got it. I was
Okay.
forgetting.
I think particularly the areas that I heard a couple of areas that needed input, like the table of contents and there was maybe something that Elizabeth mentioned that needed some data
Bylaw.
from MHC and what are the sections in particular that you want help with? But also I think the issues should come from also some of the stakeholder discussions. That would be interesting to know if they informed some of the issues, because part of the challenge, isn't it, about how the community perceives, what
Yeah.
the community should be doing,
Yeah, that's the stakeholder groups in the survey.
Mhm.
right?
Definitely.
So I think that information would be interesting.
And is there a way for the survey? Concord has control of the survey. I don't. If it were in my Survey Monkey process, you just push a button and you get it's very vanilla, but you get a report. Is that something that can be done for this survey?
I gave you the bar graphs and the spreadsheet. That's what
Okay.
they provide.
Well, that might be something, to share with them. So
Yeah.
that it's not just the raw material.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anne and Elizabeth.
It's hard
Move-
work.
Moving on to the CPC grant application. The grant application is gonna be due on September 13th. So Ann, could you just are there any areas that the historical commission I mean, there's money gonna be out there for the taking. So is there any areas that we should be concentrating on or writing grants for?
Right, well, there is, oh, go ahead.
It seems like I'm new to to Concord, but it seemed like there's been a lot of discussion about the need to inventory and or evaluate the modernist work in Concord, particularly Conaton community and probably some others, but I think a whole context study about the modern works would be helpful.
Definitely, that was very, very high on the list too. And even, since the commission does now review, does all the demo reviews for buildings over 50 years old, just getting a sense of, the various developments too, even if it's not high style modernism, just, what was built. And I don't think much of any of the 20th century has been studied. I think I wasn't sure what Anne Forbes's cutoff date was, whether it was 1930 or 1940. But there's a lot of 20th century stuff that just hasn't been studied at all.
There's that, for example, there's that little Irish neighborhood that's over behind the Catholic church in the center of town. And we've looked at a demolition review do you know where I'm talking about, Ann? It's a sweet little neighborhood behind the Catholic church, kind of tucked off.
Yeah,
And-
Bedford Street is really interesting. That's where the Robbins house, a bunch of houses were moved to that area, including the Robbins house. I think when the trains went in.
That's a little different.
And
than
that's where the poor farm was too. That would be a really interesting place to study. The
Yeah.
earlier poor farm, or sorry, the poor house before
It's
the poor
over
farm.
sort of by the cemetery. What's that road? Bedford Road?
Bedford, yeah.
Yeah, and it's right off, it's right off that road. So we're talking about the same area. I mean, that's just an example. I think those houses are 1900 and something.
Or they were moved, like the Robbins house. It was
But-
moved there and then an Irish family moved into it.
That's proximate to where I'm talking about, but it's
Okay.
more a little cul-de-sac, actually. It was very sweet. I mean, look. Anyway,
Right. Right, so the Historical Commission doesn't have a budget, neither does the HCC, and so really the only way you can make progress is through, grants.
Yeah.
Right, and so I think it would make sense to just keep on applying every year for CPC funding and just
Yep.
plug away, right?
yeah,
The other issue that comes up a lot in previous planning documents is archaeology.
Mhm.
Whether you need sort of an archaeological plan, because that's sort of a big mystery for me. And I think for many, or, sorry, my light keeps on going out.
yeah, it disappeared.
Um, and we've also said, there are some things that just sort of pop up that we haven't planned for. And whether there's a way to sort of apply and have it be sort of vague and just say that it's for survey work, that's either
As
identified in the
needed.
plan. Sorry.
DVD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll check. And I did not have a chance to check that out further with CPC people who've been at it for longer than I have. But there is something about not substituting for something the town should already be doing.
Mm.
I forget what the exact language is, but we've got CHC has gotten money before, and other town projects have too. So I just want to, I think that's a fine idea. We just have to find out how to say it.
Do we have to identify something in order to apply for monies?
I don't know yet. I don't think
think-
so.
Usually it's, usually it's a project.
Yeah,
And something that you would hire a consultant for that
Right.
supports the work of the town or the knowledge base of the town. Sometimes some communities use CPA as matching funds for MHC grants, survey and planning grants, which is another source.
that's interesting.
But,
Yeah.
inventory and survey work is a classic CPA project. I mean, a lot of communities use CPA for that.
At the very
and there
least.
is a very, very specific, set aside for historic preservation.
Well, has anything been identified in the past that wasn't addressed that we could use again or apply for again, or that we would know of, Anne? Or do you think, or?
That's been applied for in the past.
And
I don't-
anything in the past that we could, use this time around?
I'm not really sure if I understand.
Well,
But
is there-
certainly it's been.
Do we have a precedent, something we can look at that's just model off of?
Oh, I didn't understand you though.
Well, was there anything in the past that we applied for NCP, any preservation monies before that we didn't get that
I don't think so.
we could use this time, that we could apply for this time? Any projects?
I don't think so.
No, I
No.
think most of the grants have been successful.
Okay,
I think so too.
I
I didn't
think-
know what Doug said. I didn't hear what Doug said.
go ahead, Doug.
Now he's muted.
Yeah, let me unmute. There's background noise, so I apologize for that. No, I mean, well, a couple of thoughts. First of all, if you're going to apply for something and it's competitive, if
Uh-oh.
it's vague, I think you get a less chance of somebody saying yes, right?
True.
But I think if I think the question was, is there any precedent? Is there anything that we've applied for and succeeded in the past that we can say, yeah, it's like this. It's like the thing that we did before. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure that's, I mean, someone might look at that and say, well, you don't need to do this. We don't need to fund you to do the same thing again.
No,
I
no.
think it's really
Well-
important just to pick a high priority project and make a good case for why it's needed. And a good application should be successful. Because it is part of the purpose of CPA is to fund historic preservation projects. And the whole reason CPA was created was to fund these areas that typically are underfunded.
Yeah.
Well, it's housing, it's historic preservation, it's recreation and open space.
Open space, yeah, recreation came later, but open space was
So those,
in the original, yeah.
Okay. Nancy?
So, yeah, I think, we have to have a specific project. That's the, that's the key here. We can't just apply, we're not just applying for
Right.
money for nothing. I like the possibility of doing a study on Conantum. I think, modernism, yes, in Concord, but just specifically Conantum. I think that should be an independent study. That's one neighborhood, one, group. That would be a candidate. I hesitate to bring this up, and Nancy's just left, so I want her in this conversation. And this might be moot, I don't know. I have been getting, I've written lots and lots of emails about the benches that the Garden Club donated to the town in 1975 for the bicentennial. And someone suggested to me that could be a source for an application for CPA money. Someone from the Garden Club offered to write the recommendation. I'm not advocating this because I've thought about this a lot. I don't know, maybe Doug and Lauren, you don't know, over a year and a half ago, started this survey of monuments and markers in our town, and then I found these benches. I thought there were 12 of them. They were donated by the Garden Club in 1975, and just a month or two ago, some of the missing ones that I couldn't find, or one showed up, and it's was knocked off. It's a piece of granite knocked off, and it was flush with the ground in Everett Gardens down the street from my house. And then there've been lots of emails flying around. Mimi Graney, the person in the economics vitality, is her manager. I don't know her title. Anne, you could help me with that.
I'm not sure.
Economics vitality something other, but she wrote to me initially about it. She said, Nancy, I know you were doing the survey, and there are 2 benches on Main Street that have sunk below grade and too low to sit on, and I'm thinking of applying for funding. And I then sent her off all the information. I said, yeah, I'm looking for the missing one. And then unbeknownst to me, someone in the Garden Club had been looking for them, and there weren't 12, there were only 10. That the number 12 was a mistake in the record. And so I've had so many fun emails to different people, and they're mixed thoughts about them because there are so many. It's, maybe we don't need to preserve all of them. And I still haven't gotten a number of how much it would cost to fix them, but I thought, oh, these are just granite benches. That's a simple fix. Well, it turns out it's not a simple fix. You have to go through committees, get votes. You have to get it on Public Works. Apparently it's going to be a lot. It's really expensive. So you have to think, well, maybe this is just not worth it for these benches. But the idea did come up too, that when we install new markers and monuments, that really, if we vote them in, they need to be preserved, they need to be protected. So it is a question, what should happen to them? There are two, one sitting in front of Wright Tavern, another in front of the visitor center, and maybe they're just fine, just sitting low to the ground. They're a curiosity. I just label them a curiosity now, but this one person who helped to write that article on the bridge and found the other one said, okay, that might be, we could ask for CPA money. I
I'm
don't know
just
what
wondering,
what
is
you
that
guys
open?
think about it.
I don't know what category that would go in. Open space, maybe?
Historic
I
preservation.
don't think
It's
I don't think
preservation
it's-
of a gift. It's also, yeah,
Why
people
not?
sit on them for open space. Again, I'm not saying that our commission should be the one to write it. It's just the topic came up of what we could ask for money for, and that was suggested to me. I don't really want to spend my time on this. It's not a priority for me. So
How old are they again?
50 years old, because they're all inscribed. They're inscribed 1775 to 1975. There were 10 of them, and there's 2 in the Sleepy Hollow. There's one across the street from my house. There's one in Emerson Park. So we have a lot of them. It's not like we've neglected them, right?
Weren't they talking about it being a public works project?
Yes, but then, because Mimi's the one who brought it up. I
Right.
did not raise this. She raised it. And I said, oh, that's a great idea. Because I thought, oh yeah, this is simple. And then she came back to me and said, wait a minute, Public Works is overloaded with work. And someone put out the number $20,000. I have no idea. Like, I just practically fell off my chair when I read that. And I thought, no, we can buy new ones for that. So yeah.
So that's one idea.
It's an idea. And, I had
Mhm.
written to Alan earlier this month just with some thoughts that I've been having. Our commission is we haven't done anything for the 250th. We haven't, as a commission, said, okay, we want to sort of, no one has said that, made a proposal that as a commission, we would like to make some, I don't know, gesture. We are the historical commission after all, and this is, a milestone anniversary. One of the reasons I sent out a letter initially, I sent it out to a group of people saying that this could be a project that could be supported by the 250th Permanent Memorial Commission, because they don't just have to do one public commission. They're doing the trees, they're doing digitization they're just supporting digitization of veterans documents that are in the library. So they're not actually doing work, that's just a supportive thing. And I thought, well, that would be a really interesting idea to just bring back to use these benches that were commissioned for the last milestone anniversary that we had. It would be a nice nod to the past of what permanent memorials are, and they're just simple benches. But again, after all the emails that I've had, no one has come up with a number and told me how much it would cost. So until we know that number, we can't apply for money, right? And that's the thing the information that is missing. Yeah, so, but that could be something that we could do if we wanted to. I'm just telling you this issue came up, supporting it. Or advocating for it.
Really enamored of the inventory and study of Conantum and other
I like
20th
that.
century modern resources. I know Lincoln's been struggling with this too and worried about those resources.
Yeah.
So. And then Anne had another idea, which was more open-ended ability to hire experts. I don't know how to phrase that exactly, but I think it could be done.
She also mentioned the need to inventory and evaluate 20th century resources in general.
That's,
I think.
That's kind of what I
Yeah.
was
So
getting
I
at.
think the modern period in Conantum is its own thing, and you might want you could find, there are folks out there who kind of specialize in that period, but then there's earlier stuff,
Yeah.
particularly 1900, 1920, that you know, it sounds to me like it's under-documented.
Yeah, well, that's the same general idea in my mind anyway. But then, you know, the archaeological, you know, the
In
ability.
archaeology, right?
However, in the case of the Permanent Memorial Subcommittee, even though the Historical Commission asked for an archaeological assessment there, I think that is necessitated by the work that's being proposed. So my own personal opinion would be that that should be a Permanent Memorial Subcommittee responsibility. But that idea is still the same or is similar for, you know, we may want to do things on our own in terms of looking at underdocumented archaeological potential sites. I don't know what those are exactly, but
Yeah, I wonder if sort of areas of archaeological sensitivity, of course, a lot of Concord is going to probably fall into that.
well, it's an interesting question whether or not the town follows proper procedures before they go digging and doing whatnot.
Right. Yeah,
That may be a little underrepresented. I'm not sure.
Well,
Right.
and with that in mind, would, you know, the PAL fall under that guideline? You know, for the archaeological dig at
the
the
Public Archaeology Lab,
yeah, at the 1693, yeah,
yeah.
They're engaged already.
right.
But they're the kind of firm that does a broad range of work, everything from, you know, national register nominations to surveys to archaeological assessments.
Yeah.
And, you know,
They've
so
done a lot of
they're
work with
well, yeah.
Right, there's a proposal by Public Archaeology Lab for parcel 1693 that they weren't ready, that, you know, the 250th Permanent Memorial Committee they weren't quite ready to bring it before you tonight, but I would expect it to come before you, you know, next month.
Okay.
Oh, good. That's great to hear.
Well, I think that, don't we need to, if we're going to propose that we make an application for modernism study in Conantum, we need a vote for tonight, right? If we want, because, and you would write the application, is that it, Anne?
Or a motion, yeah. Yep, something we can vote on.
I'm willing to support that if everyone agrees that that's the,
Well, I'm curious about Lauren's comment that Conantum could be part of a broader look
yeah.
at.
I think it would be useful to have a kind of historic context statement about modernism in Concord. And that would help give us context, particularly for any other, you know, demolition proposals that come up. But then maybe you say there's a focus on the Conantum neighborhood. But any good inventory is going to give you some context. I think that would be useful, and to sort of look at Concord relative to its neighbors that also have these, you know, Carl Koch developments. I mean, we have a really pretty one, and we had one in Belmont that, you know, I'm trying to get that commission to do the same on. And of course, Lexington has some.
Probius
Lincoln
House.
does.
Yeah.
And so, you know, kind of putting Concord in context, I
Context,
think
yeah.
would be really great. So that's what that would be my pitch, would
Yeah.
be to add some historical context to the study. That will
Would
make
you-
it really interesting.
Lauren, would you break it up by years, or would you put it?
I would leave,
time?
well, that's a great question. I mean, when was Anne could figure that out, I'm sure, but you might look at when Tack and when was Gropius at Harvard, and
An
you know, there is,
architectural historian could tell you that in a minute.
yeah, and maybe part of, you could
Okay.
even say part of the first task of this project is to define the time period. But you might want to do a little bit of background research to frame that, but it could be, I don't know if it'd be as early as 1940. It's going to be post-war, probably.
I think it would be a good idea to find out what the cutoff date for Ann Forbes macro studies were. And, you know, I think framing Conantum is a great idea, you know, maybe not, yeah, maybe by decade, just giving a general sense of what has happened since, you know, in the, yeah.
Because
Or
then the question
framing
would
it, just
be,
putting it in context, framing Conantum.
are you going to have, is it going to include new or updated building forms? Or, you know, what is what does this survey actually entail?
Right, I mean, for Canton, I would think it would be an area form, and there might be other areas in town too,
Okay.
developments. But right, I'm sure there are individual houses too that deserve their own. form.
Maybe there's a handful of the most significant or the most, you know, structures remaining that have the most integrity. But the nice thing I like about the area form is it gives you the landscape context in which, you know, all these houses sit that make it a whole community.
And
which I
maybe
think
this is just the
great.
first pass too,
Yeah,
right, and then there's gonna be deeper studies in the future.
yeah.
I'm
Just
going to slide again.
FYI, Protheus house is 1938, so that's.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so for it would be, yeah, that doesn't surprise me actually.
No.
So it would be, it might be mid-30s to 1970 even.
It would be so interesting to have a moving map where you had rural Concord and then through a time lapse, all the streets and developments that have gone in from it was rural to now into the visually see
Yeah,
how quickly, how it's accelerated the development.
yeah. Now with, you know, all this computer aided design, someone could do that. That would be fascinating.
Great
To
to put it
do
up.
a digital map that showed the development of Concord maybe by decade.
Yeah. I've often thought that, you know, looking at the streets and when we did the scenic road and, you know, how few streets and then all of a sudden, woo.
You know, there
Sounds
might
like a
be,
GSD studio to me.
That's a lot of
Yeah.
digitizing, Lauren.
Anyway,
yeah,
so where are we?
Looking for a motion?
Uh,
I can make,
do you want to make it, Nance?
sure. I make a motion that we apply, write an application, a CPA application to do a study of the modernist era in Concord, architecture in here, and to frame the development, especially of Conantum.
With emphasis on the Conantum neighborhood?
Oh, with an emphasis and, you know, the leading up to it and maybe the decades after.
And we have a second?
Second.
Second.
And so
Oh, I can't vote. Sorry. Oh, I can vote tonight. Okay.
Yep, and we will take a vote on that. All in favor?
Roll call vote.
Roll call vote. Nancy?
Aye.
Nelson? Nancy Frisella Lee?
Aye.
Alan Bogosian, aye. I think that's it, right?
great.
I
Very
died.
good.
Okay,
Doug says,
We don't usually get to vote if we're associates. Are you associate? I think you are. I was
Yeah.
personally appointed.
I
but-
think Alan is the only one who's not, or Nancy probably, right?
Appointed.
They've got
Nancy
two who can
Frisella
vote.
Lee.
I'm an associate. but
Nancy
not-
Frisella Lee is a
Yeah.
member, yes. in good standing. Okay. The last item on the agenda is other businesses, right? Anne, anything that you would like to bring up, or any commissions, members of the commission want to bring up? Nancy?
I just want to make note of the almost total demolition of 183, I think, Hubbard Street. And the gutting of the house and the preservation of a couple of exterior features. And this is something that we talked about long time ago. And I think even when Heather was here, we were looking at ways to reinforce the protection for historic resources. And this house is outside the historic district. And it's not a total demolition, so it doesn't come before the historical commission either. So I think we've seen this happen before. And at some point in time, maybe we should take up the changes we'd like to see in the charge and the authorities of the historical commission to include partial demolition. Looks like there's gonna be another house, another separate house, because the original house now has opening for a window at the back. So there's a huge excavation, which makes me think there's gonna be another house there.
Mhm.
So anyway, we should watch. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
There was
noticed
another
that.
like that in West Concord.
Right now. Right now.
Yeah, they're pretty well done with it. Yeah, it's on if you go down Brown towards Cousins Field, I think what's at the intersection Central is that comes through the first
Yeah.
intersection. But there's a house on the corner that the entire thing was gutted, like the entire thing. Just leaving really the frame of the house. And they've added a big addition in the back, and it's gonna look quite different than it was.
I believe that came before us.
Okay.
That house.
Why would it if it wasn't a total demolition? It would not.
No, I think it was at the intersection, and he bought that one and the one across the street, if it's the one I'm thinking of.
Mhm.
I remember one on Barrett's Mill Road and one on Monument Street that they kept the front facade and then everything else was
Right. I remember the Barrett's Mill Road one, which is now a two-family, that one.
Oh, that's another one.
Right.
Yeah, that's another one. So there's a couple. Okay.
But I would think, wouldn't the Historic District Commission wouldn't that be under their purview?
Only if it's in a historic district. And this house on Hubbard Street is not. Other houses on Hubbard Street are.
Mhm.
But I think Anne or somebody reminded me that the neighborhood objected the last time it was brought up that more houses should be included on Hubbard Street, and it went down because of neighborhood opposition.
Lauren?
I have a question, since I'm new to Concord. Is there, do you think there would be appetite in Concord to amend the demolition delay bylaw
Don't know.
to strengthen?
Don't know.
We know what we would like.
That was a concern when we were considering changes, and we
Yeah.
did change the date, I think, for historic resource. I can't remember exactly. It was
We did. I
before.
think it was, wasn't it
There
40?
there are some communities that have really complex demolition delay bylaws that look at massing
Yeah.
changes.
Right.
And, some other criteria, that ways that you can really change the character of something in a neighborhood without demolishing
Yeah.
the structure. Arlington is what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to accomplish that where I was, but
Yeah, we looked
some
at
communities
a
do.
lot of other models. I think I have
Yeah.
them buried somewhere, but anyway, just
Yeah.
something to be aware
Yeah.
of, keep our eyes
Yeah.
open.
Yeah. That might be in issues for Elizabeth.
Yeah, I was wondering that myself.
Right? Yeah. It's really about preserving community character.
Yeah, because they would have had to
Yeah.
get permission from, anyway, permits, right?
Yeah, the building department.
And
Yeah.
if that could be flagged, if houses of a certain date, if that could, but flagging for what? That they would have to come before us for what? Then we'd have to change.
Yeah,
the-
we have to change.
But
bylaw.
the building department doesn't go on design, they just go on
their-
the
on their
code,
codes.
Right.
not on design.
Yeah.
So,
Or not on history.
right, right, it's more code.
Mhm.
In fact, it's bringing,
And I think they're probably
A little
very
different.
careful about if something's in a historic district or if something's being totally demolished. I expect planning would hear about it.
Mhm.
They're very,
Yeah, demolition triggers it, for sure. We have wondered about partial demolition.
Yeah.
I used to have a lot of data on that. I'll get together with Melissa.
well,
maybe
it
some-
depends, Elizabeth, it depends on what partial demolition is, because if. You can do up to 1,000 square foot addition on your residence, but then. Once you go beyond 1,000 square feet, then you get into a total different building code.
Mhm. Yes.
And a lot of the older houses, more than 50, 60 years old, can't take the new code without structural enhancements.
Yeah.
That's such a good point. And there's a building, there's a house at 475 Monument Street. The 1820s edition was demolished by a car that crashed into it. The original house is maybe 1775, but it bothered me a lot to see current code for, foundations and, you have to have this, that, and the other stuff. And then they smacked it right up against this ancient house. And
Mhm.
I don't know how that's going to work out in the end, but I think that's what you're talking about. Anyway,
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
There's two kinds of codes. This is something maybe I need to ask Alan about later. I was just reading about something like that this morning, looking into some housing questions that Ann and I kind of been raising for each other. And, I specifically saw that there's a recommendation that one kind of code is better for historic preservation than another.
mhm.
oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I'll find that reference and send it to Alan, just,
Okay,
Oh, I'd love to see.
and
sure.
yeah.
Hmm.
Thank you. Okay, that's all I have.
All right, then, so that takes care of other business. Any other comments, questions, or, we don't have to take a vote to adjourn, right?
I don't think so.
The, August 8th meeting is, now adjourned.